The scanner at Vale's Edge quarantine station had processed 47,000 arrivals without a single anomaly. Director V had grown to trust its rhythmic efficiency, the soft hum, the polite beep, the holographic verdict rendered in calm blue text. Low threat. Agricultural clearance approved. Minimal concern. The routine had become meditative. Each passenger stepped through the scanning field, paused for 3 seconds, and continued into council space. No drama, no exceptions. 6 centuries of perfect operation. Then Kess Tavern walked through. The scanner stalled. The central display froze mid-cycle, holographic readout flickering like a dying star. V looked up from his console, neck plates shifting with mild curiosity. Technical glitches happened. Rarely, but they happened. 3 full seconds passed, an eternity in processing time. Then sparks erupted from the scanner's housing. Actual electrical sparks, arcing across components that had never shown stress before. The display rebooted, cycled through colors that definitely weren't in the technical manual, and finally settled on pulsing red that bathed the entire checkpoint in urgent crimson light. System Priority 1. V stared at the words as though they'd been written in a dead language. His four-fingered hand hovered over the emergency protocols he'd never once activated. "That's not possible," he said aloud. "Clearly it is." Officer Rake coiled in the doorway, his tet frame creating shadows that looked predatory even in rest. "Because it just happened." V's translator chip rendered his next sound as frustration. "The system doesn't generate Priority 1 classifications. That designation is reserved for plague ships, weaponized singularities, rogue AI collectives." He gestured at the human woman standing in the scanner field, looking mildly inconvenienced. "Not that." Kess Tavern appeared unremarkable by every metric. Standard cargo hauler's jumpsuit scuffed at knees and elbows. No visible weapons. No augmentations, no cybernetics, no psionic emissions. V's secondary screen had already pulled her file, aggressively boring. Freelance transport contractor. Tax records current. 3 minor traffic violations, all paid. "Run the scan again," V said. Rake's translator rendered his laugh as grinding gravel. "You think it's a calibration error?" "It's always a calibration error. This scanner has identified threats with 0 false positives for 600 years. 0. Rake tapped one claw against the doorframe. It caught the Melori smuggler with a bioweapon hidden in his liver. It flagged the Thosian diplomat who turned out to be 3 sentient fungi in a suit. It once detected a delayed action curse embedded in a luggage tag. V's neck plates flattened, a vain expression of deep skepticism. "And now you think a single unarmed human is more dangerous than all of that?" "I think it's broken," Rake said slowly, "or we never properly assessed what baseline human biology actually means." In the scanner field, Kess raised one hand. "Can I move, or is this a statue situation?" V activated the intercom. "Remain in position. We're resolving a technical issue." "Technical issue," she repeated it flat as a tax form. "Right." The scanner beeped again, insistent. The Priority 1 designation didn't waver. Rake moved closer to the console, optical membranes narrowing. "What if it's not broken?" "Then explain how a single unarmed human registers as a higher threat than a Cravathi warlord carrying a plasma lance." "I can't," Rake admitted, "but neither can you, which is why we're having this conversation instead of waving her through." V stared at the pulsing red display, then at Kess, then back at the display. The scanner had never lied, not once in 6 centuries. "Pull her full biometric panel," he said finally. "If there's something the scanner detected, it'll be in the cellular analysis. And if the analysis comes back clean." V didn't answer. He was already drafting the request for a medical team, his mind refusing to consider worst-case scenarios until they were unavoidable. In the scanner field, Kess shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She looked bored. She looked like someone who'd been through quarantine processing 100 times and expected this to take another 20 minutes. She looked, in other words, like exactly the kind of thing a malfunctioning scanner might flag by mistake. The medical bay smelled of ionized air and industrial sterility, the kind that suggested everything had been cleaned twice and then cleaned again for good measure. Dr. Chelm stood before a wall of cascading data streams, his compound eyes processing information in parallel, which meant he could experience confusion on multiple levels simultaneously. "This is wrong," he said. Kess looked up from the handheld screen she'd been issued, some kind of station newsletter about safety protocols. "My blood work came back wrong." "No, it came back correct. That's the problem." Chelm gestured at the data, his forearms moving in patterns that would have been elegant if they weren't so agitated. "Your physiology contradicts itself. You operate on incompatible systems that should cancel each other out, yet somehow they compound." "I'm going to need you to translate that out of medical panic," Kess said. V entered the bay, rake a shadow behind him. "Explain it in terms we can use for a threat assessment." Chelm's translator made a sound like a sigh, though his species didn't breathe. "Her body produces adrenaline, a stimulant compound that increases strength, pain tolerance, and reaction speed during stress. Normal enough. Most species have something similar for emergency response." "So far unremarkable," V said. "Except humans also produce endorphins in response to pain, natural analgesics that suppress distress signals, and cortisol for sustained stress response, and norepinephrine for focus enhancement." Chelm pulled up a molecular diagram that looked like weaponized geometry, and they stack, all of them, simultaneously. Rake leaned forward. "You're saying when she's injured she gets stronger." "I'm saying when she's injured, her body deploys a chemical cocktail that would be classified as a performance-enhancing drug on 14 council worlds and an illegal stimulant on 9 others." Chelm's voice took on an edge. "And that's just her baseline emergency response. I haven't even started on her immune system." Kess raised one finger. "In my defense, I didn't design any of this." "Your immune system has a memory," Chelm continued, ignoring her. "It learns, adapts, creates permanent defenses against threats it's encountered once." "Most species have adaptive immunity," V said carefully. "But yours is aggressive. It doesn't just defend, it innovates. I found antibodies in your bloodstream for pathogens that don't exist in council databases. Your body is fighting threats it hasn't even met yet." "Overprepared," Kess said, "very on brand for humans." V studied the molecular diagrams with the expression of someone reading his own autopsy report. "This still doesn't explain a priority 1 classification. Enhanced stress response and aggressive immunity aren't existential threats." "No," Chelm agreed. "But her musculoskeletal structure is built for endurance, not burst performance. She has slow-twitch muscle fibers optimized for sustained activity. Her cardiovascular system regulates heat over extended periods. Her metabolism can switch between fuel sources to maintain energy during scarcity." He pulled up a comparison chart showing Kess's profile against a Cravathi warrior and a Thosian hunter. "She's not built to win a fight. She's built to outlast one." The bay went quiet except for the ambient hum of medical equipment. "Elaborate," Rake said softly. "Look at the data. A Cravathi can overpower her in seconds. A Thosian can outrun her in any sprint." Chelm's forearms gestured at the comparison. "But she can walk for days without stopping, hunt injured prey across continents, chase targets until they collapse from exhaustion." His compound eyes fixed on Kess. "Her species didn't evolve to be apex predators. They evolved to be the thing that never stops coming." Kess made a noise that might have been agreement. "Persistence predators. We used to hunt antelope that way. Just walked after them until they couldn't run anymore. Took hours, sometimes days, but we always caught them." V's neck plates began a rapid flutter that suggested his autonomic nervous system had opinions about this conversation. You hunted by walking at prey until it died of exhaustion. Not all prey, just the fast ones. And you don't see anything concerning about that, Rake asked. Kes tilted her head. Is this the part where I'm supposed to apologize for my evolutionary history? Chelm pulled up another series of molecular diagrams, these ones pooling with highlighted sections that drew the eye like warning signs. Your body chemistry is optimized for exactly that hunting strategy. You don't just endure, you're chemically rewarded for enduring. Explain, V said, though part of him didn't want to know. Pain releases endorphins, euphoria generators. Exertion triggers dopamine, satisfaction compounds. Prolonged stress activates systems that make her sharper, not weaker. Chelm's voice carried something between fascination and horror. Her body treats suffering as positive feedback. Rake's claws scraped against the examination platform. She's a walking war crime. I'm a cargo hauler, Kes corrected. You're a biological weapon that hauls cargo as a hobby. I haul cargo as a job. The weapon thing is just standard equipment. V pulled up the scanner's original threat assessment, reading through the metrics with new context. Injury resilience, extreme. Stress adaptation, unprecedented. Threat persistence probability, incalculable. The scanner didn't flag you as dangerous because of what you can do right now, he said slowly. It flagged you because of what you won't stop doing. Correct, Chelm said. A threat assessment measures capacity for sustained harm. She doesn't have the highest damage output. She has the highest probability of never stopping damage output, regardless of injury, exhaustion, or tactical disadvantage. Kes stood brushing off her jumpsuit. So your scanner figured out that humans are annoyingly persistent. Congratulations. Can I leave now? We need to check something else first, Rake said. What else is there? V's neck plates settled into a pattern that suggested uncomfortable determination. Your history. If your biology is this concerning, I need to know what your species actually does with it. The archive room was smaller than expected for a facility that allegedly stored 6 centuries of xenological data. Junior analyst Fenn sat hunched over a terminal, his sensory tendrils twitching in patterns that suggested either deep concentration or rising hysteria. Possibly both. I ran the search parameters you specified, he said without looking up. Cross-referenced human historical records with threat behavior patterns, conflict resolution strategies, and cultural persistence markers. And V prompted. And I think your scanner might be understating the problem. Rake moved closer, reading over Fenn's shoulder. The screen was a cascade of flagged entries, each one tagged with risk assessment icons in shades of amber and red. How many results? 17,412. I filtered out everything that wasn't directly relevant to long-term threat sustainability. That's what's left. V felt something cold settle in his thorax. Show me categories. Fenn pulled up a classification tree. Endurance warfare, 3,000 entries. Generational conflict, 2,100 entries. Revenge narrative spanning multiple lifetimes, 890. Cultural vendettas that outlasted the civilizations that started them, 406. He paused. And those are just the historical records. Their fiction is worse. Fiction, V said slowly. You're telling me their stories are a threat indicator. Their stories are a threat profile. Fenn opened a subcategory, and the screen filled with archived human narratives. Every culture on their planet developed mythology around things that don't quit, curses that follow bloodlines for generations, ghosts that haunt locations for centuries, monsters that survive their own deaths and return stronger. Kes, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, made a thoughtful noise. The Count of Monte Cristo spent 14 years in prison, then another decade systematically destroying everyone who put him there. We consider that a romance novel." "You consider that romantic?" Rake asked. "Extremely." He was very thorough, pulled up a different file cluster, his tendrils moving faster now. "Battle of Thermopylae. 300 soldiers held a position against thousands for 3 days, knowing they'd die. Siege of Leningrad. Civilians endured 900 days of starvation rather than surrender. The 100 Years' War actually lasted 116 years because nobody bothered to formalize the ending. They just kept fighting." "Out of spite?" V asked. "Spite isn't a military strategy," Rake said. "For them it is," Fenn countered. He opened another file. "Operation Downfall, never executed but fully planned. They were prepared to arm their entire civilian population, including children, to resist an invasion. Projected casualties in the millions. The strategic assessment concluded they'd do it anyway because surrender wasn't culturally viable." Rake scrolled through the entries, his predator's brain cataloging patterns. "These aren't isolated incidents. This is systematic." "That's what I'm trying to tell you." Fenn's voice carried an edge of desperation. "Every war they fought has the same markers: refusal to acknowledge defeat conditions, willingness to sustain casualties beyond logical tolerance, operational continuation despite resource exhaustion." He pulled up a military lexicon entry. "There's a term in their tactical vocabulary: acceptable losses. They calculate how much damage they can absorb and keep functioning. That's not normal." "What's not normal," Kess interjected, "is that everyone else apparently gives up when things get difficult." V turned to face her. "You consider it abnormal to stop fighting when victory becomes impossible." "I consider it abnormal to decide victory is impossible before you've exhausted every option, including the stupid ones." "The stupid ones," Rake repeated. "Sometimes the stupid option works because nobody expects anyone to be that committed to a dumb idea." Kess's expression remained neutral. "We once won a battle by hiding inside a wooden horse. A horse, made of wood. And it worked because the enemy couldn't conceive of anyone being that committed to a dumb idea." Fenn pulled up another file, this one tagged with multiple warning icons. "Their literature has a whole genre called cosmic horror, built around the premise that some threats can't be defeated, only endured. And their protagonists endure anyway. They created entertainment based on the concept that fighting unwinnable battles is not only acceptable but admirable." "That's insane," V said quietly. "That's humanity," Kess replied. "We know we're going to die eventually. We know entropy wins. We keep going anyway because the alternative is boring." Rake was reading a specific entry, his optical membranes dilating. "There's a human named Tsutomu Yamaguchi who survived 2 atomic detonations. 2, in different cities, 3 days apart. He lived to be 93, Kess added helpfully. Had a family, gave lectures about nuclear disarmament, just kept going. Your species survived its own extinction-level weapons by outliving them." Fenn's tendrils were now exhibiting what could only be described as frantic waving. "You split the atom, built weapons that could end your civilization, deployed them twice, and then just decided to keep existing anyway. That's not survival instinct. That's aggressive refusal to accept reality." V stared at the archive screen, watching entry after entry scroll past. Feuds that spanned centuries. Projects that took generations to complete. Families that maintained grudges longer than some species maintained civilizations. The pattern wasn't violence. Violence was common enough across the galaxy. The pattern was continuation. Humans didn't fight until they won. They fought until the concept of stopping became irrelevant. Scanner wasn't measuring current threat level, Rake said quietly, his voice cutting through the archive room's ambient hum. It was measuring threat inevitability. V looked up from the cascading historical data. "Explain." "A Cravathi warlord is dangerous now. Immediate, quantifiable threat. But a warlord can be defeated, killed, contained. The threat ends. Rake gestured at the screen filled with human historical patterns. But this, how do you contain a species that treats obstacles as temporary and defeat as a suggestion? The scanner didn't malfunction, Fenn said, his voice barely above a whisper. It recognized something we don't have protocols for. V pulled up a comparative threat analysis, watching as the system attempted to map human persistence against known galactic dangers. The algorithms kept failing, unable to find completion points. Every scenario it ran ended with the same conclusion: threat duration incalculable. What if we're not analyzing a person? Fenn's tendrils had gone still, a sign of deep unease in his species. What if we're analyzing a species-level weapon that doesn't know it's a weapon? Kess pushed off from the wall. I'm going to need you to stop calling me a weapon. I have feelings. Not many, but they exist. Do you understand what we're looking at here? V asked her directly. I understand you've spent 3 hours discovering that humans don't quit easily, which, for the record, we could have told you. It's kind of our whole thing. She glanced at the screen. You want me to sign a waiver promising not to persist aggressively in council space. I can do that. Won't mean much, but I can do it. A waiver doesn't address the fundamental problem, Rake said, which is that we have no framework for managing a threat that doesn't end. Kess smiled then, sharp and tired and utterly without malice. Welcome to every human's internal monologue. We don't know how to stop either. We just got really good at pretending it's intentional. V called for a break, needing time to process what they'd uncovered. He stood in the observation deck, overlooking the quarantine processing floors, watching thousands of beings from hundreds of species move through checkpoints with orderly efficiency. Rake joined him, silent for several long moments. I ran a query, the TET officer said finally. After the initial flag, I checked comparative analyses on every human who's passed through council checkpoints in the last year. V's neck plates went rigid, and the scanner registered elevated concern markers on 73% of them. It just never reached critical threshold because they weren't traveling alone through a high-security quarantine zone. She tripped the threshold because there were no other variables to dilute the reading. You're telling me the scanner has been quietly concerned about humans for years and nobody noticed. The flags were subtle, fractional increases in threat assessment well within acceptable parameters. We attributed it to calibration variance, cultural factors, standard noise. Rake's claws tapped against the observation window. It wasn't noise. V watched a human family pass through checkpoint 7, parents with 2 small children laughing about something completely ordinary. The scanner processed them with its usual efficiency. Low threat, agricultural clearance approved. But now V knew what the scanner was really seeing. Not the family as they were, but what they represented, what they could become, what they would never stop becoming. We have 3 options, V said quietly. Detain her pending further evaluation, reject her entry and revoke her travel clearance, or override the scanner and release her with standard monitoring. Option 1 creates a diplomatic incident, Rake said. Humans have council representation now. We'd have to justify holding someone whose only crime is having concerning biology. Option 2 creates the same problem with additional complications. Which leaves option 3. V turned from the window. Which leaves acknowledging that we're dealing with something we can't control, can't contain, and can't predict, and then letting it walk out of here anyway. Decision Chamber was designed for contemplation, not panic. Soft lighting, neutral acoustics, chairs built for species that actually had spines to settle into. V sat staring at a holographic display that refused to offer comfortable answers. We have 3 options, he said formally, for the record. Detain her pending further psychological evaluation, reject her entry and revoke her travel clearance, or override the scanner and release her with standard monitoring protocols. Rake occupied the space near the door, not sitting, not standing, existing in that predatory state of readiness that made everyone else uncomfortable. Option 1 escalates this into a diplomatic incident. Humans have council representation. Detaining one of their citizens without charge means lawyers, ambassadors, formal inquiries. We'd have to justify holding someone whose only crime is having concerning biology. Option 2 creates the same problem, V continued, with additional complications. We'd have to explain why we're barring a species member with no criminal record from stations they've accessed freely for 3 decades. Questions would be asked, questions we can't answer without admitting our scanner flagged her for evolutionary traits she can't control. Which leaves option 3, Rake finished. We let her go and hope this was an anomaly. It wasn't an anomaly. Fenn spoke from the corner where he'd been compulsively organizing data files. After the initial flag, I ran comparative analyses on every human who's passed through council checkpoints in the last year. The scanner registered elevated concern markers on 73% of them. V felt his neck plates go rigid. You're telling me the scanner has been quietly concerned about humans for years and nobody noticed? The flags were subtle, fractional increases in threat assessment well within acceptable parameters, but they were consistent. Every human registers slightly higher than their behavioral profile suggests they should. We attributed it to calibration variance, cultural factors, atmospheric differences affecting biometric readings. Standard noise. It wasn't noise, Rake said. It wasn't noise, Fenn confirmed. The chamber fell silent except for the ambient environmental systems, air circulation, gravity stabilizers, the distant hum of the station's core. All those carefully engineered systems designed to make space habitable, predictable, safe. V pulled up Kess's file one more time. Freelance cargo hauler, tax records current, 3 traffic violations. She'd been crossing council space for 8 years without incident. 8 years of deliveries, fuel stops, maintenance checks, customs processing. 8 years of being exactly what she claimed to be, someone who moved things from place to place and occasionally parked illegally. Bring her in, he said. Kess entered the chamber looking exactly as unbothered as she had in the scanner, the medical bay, and the archive room. She'd achieved a state of patient annoyance that suggested she'd been stuck in worse meetings and expected this one to end eventually through sheer entropic decay. Am I being charged with something? She asked. No, V said. Am I being deported? No. Then why am I here instead of on my ship? Rake answered before V could. Because we need to understand something. You've been in council space for 8 years. No incidents, no complaints, no conflicts with other species. You deliver cargo, you follow regulations, you pay your docking fees on time. By every measurable metric, you're a model citizen. I'm sensing a but coming. But you're also exactly what our threat assessment flagged, biologically optimized for persistence, culturally conditioned to ignore stopping points, psychologically resistant to defeat conditions. Rake's optical membranes narrowed. And you're just one person. There are billions of you. Kess regarded him with the expression of someone watching a particularly slow administrative process unfold. And you're wondering if humanity is a sleeper threat waiting to activate. We're wondering, V said carefully, if we should be concerned. You're already concerned. That's why I'm in this room instead of making my delivery window. Kess leaned back in the chair, which adjusted to her frame with a soft pneumatic hiss. What you're actually asking is whether your concern is justified. Is it? Kess was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful in a way that made V suddenly aware she'd been playing cooperative this entire time, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Here's what I know about humans in council space, she said finally. We've been here 3 decades. We joined voluntarily. We follow the rules mostly. We trade, we collaborate, we occasionally start bar fights, but so does everyone else. We haven't invaded anyone. We haven't subverted governments. We haven't done any of the things your scanner apparently thinks we're capable of." "That's not an answer," Rake said. "Sure it is. You're asking if humans are dangerous on a systemic level. If we were, you'd already know. We're not subtle. We're persistent, not sneaky." She met Rake's gaze without flinching. "If humanity wanted to be a problem, we wouldn't spend 30 years hauling cargo and filing paperwork. We'd have done something by now." "Unless," Rake countered, "the persistence operates on time scales we don't recognize. What if 30 years is just the opening move?" Kess laughed, short, sharp, genuine. "You think we're playing multi-generational strategy? We can barely agree on trade policy. Half our planets want isolationism. The other half want deeper integration, and everyone's arguing about it in real time on public forums. We're not executing a master plan. We're just here." "That's what makes it worse," Rake said quietly. "You don't even know you're doing it." The words hung in the air like a contamination warning. Kess stood, brushing non-existent dust from her jumpsuit. "I'm going to tell you something about humans that your scanner can't measure. We don't quit, that's true, but we're also lazy. We don't persist out of ambition. We persist because we already started, and stopping takes effort." She walked to the chamber's viewport, looking out at the docking bays. "I'm a cargo hauler because I like hauling cargo. I'm good at it. It pays adequately and I don't have to deal with management. That's it. That's the entire calculation. No hidden agenda. No species-level conspiracy. Just someone doing a job until there's a compelling reason not to." V studied her, looking for deception, threat, anything that justified the scanner's alarm. He found only tired honesty and mild irritation. And perhaps that was the most terrifying thing of all. "We're releasing you," he said. "Standard clearance, no restrictions." "Generous. But we're flagging your file, and every human file in council databases." Kess turned from the viewport. "With what classification?" V pulled up the new designation he'd drafted while waiting. "Not threat, not danger, something more accurate and infinitely more unsettling." "Uncontainable variable," he said. "A factor that can't be predicted, controlled, or reliably modeled, not because of hostility, but because of fundamental incompatibility with our threat assessment frameworks." Kess read the designation, her expression unreadable. "You're flagging my entire species as a mathematical problem you can't solve." "Yes. That's the most bureaucratic thing I've ever heard. I'm almost impressed." She headed for the door, paused, looked back. "For what it's worth, we don't know how to predict us either. We just roll with it and hope things work out. So far, they mostly have." The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. Rake moved to the observation window, watching her walk down the corridor toward the docking bays. She's going to make her delivery, file her flight plan, and continue exactly as before. "I know," V said. "And we're going to let her. We don't have a choice. We can't detain someone for being unpredictable." Rake's claws tapped against the window. "We just reclassified an entire species as a threat we can't quantify." "I'm aware. The scanner is still running diagnostics. It's been trying to recalculate her threat profile for 6 hours." V pulled up the scanner's status feed. Warnings cascaded across the screen, recalibration attempts, error corrections, logic loops searching for stable parameters. The system was caught in computational recursion, trying to measure something that refused to hold still long enough to be measured. "It's not going to figure her out," Rake observed. "No," V agreed. "It's not." In the docking bay, Kess's ship powered up with the utilitarian efficiency of a vessel designed for work, not aesthetics. She ran through her pre-flight checklist with the same methodical patience she'd shown throughout the entire interrogation. Fuel levels, navigation systems, cargo manifest verification. Everything exactly as it should be. V watched from the observation deck as her ship cleared the docking clamps and maneuvered toward the departure lanes. Standard procedure. Unremarkable. She filed her flight plan, a routine delivery run to Outpost Kepler 7, machine parts and agricultural equipment, and received clearance without delay. The scanner beeped, recalculated, failed to resolve, tried again. "Director," Fenn's voice came through V's comm link. "I've been running extended analyses on the human data patterns. And I think I understand what the scanner was trying to tell us." Fenn sounded exhausted. It wasn't flagging her as dangerous because she might attack us. It was flagging her because if we ever became her obstacle, she wouldn't stop being our obstacle until one of us ceased to exist. V watched Kess's ship join the flow of outbound traffic, indistinguishable from 100 other cargo haulers making their way through Council space. "Explain." The scanner measures threat probability across time. Most species have decay curves. Their threat potential diminishes as resources deplete, injuries accumulate, or strategic disadvantage becomes clear. But humans don't have a decay curve. They have a persistence constant. Through the viewport, Kess's ship accelerated toward the transit lane, running lights blinking in standard departure pattern. "A Cravathi warlord is immediately dangerous but strategically predictable," Fenn continued. "Apply sufficient force and the threat ends. But a human, if you make them your enemy, they become a permanent equation, not because they're stronger or smarter, but because they've culturally evolved to treat giving up as a more unacceptable outcome than death." Rake had joined V at the viewport, his predator's instincts still tracking Kess's ship even as it prepared to jump. "We just let a species-level persistence weapon integrate into Council infrastructure." "We let a cargo hauler make her delivery," V corrected. "Same thing." "Maybe, but what's the alternative? Declare war on stubbornness." The scanner beeped again, still recalculating, still failing to find stable parameters. Fenn's voice came through once more. "I found something else in the cultural archives, something humans say to each other." "What is it?" "This too shall pass." Fenn paused. "It's simultaneously a comfort and a threat. It means that bad times won't last forever, but it also means they'll outlast the bad times. They've built their entire psychological framework around being temporary but persistent, like water eroding stone. The stone doesn't lose because the water is strong. It loses because the water never stops." V thought about that, thought about 30 years of peaceful integration, 8 years of Kess Tavern hauling cargo and paying parking fines, billions of humans living ordinary lives throughout Council space, working jobs, raising families, contributing to galactic commerce. All of them carrying that same persistence constant, that same inability to accept permanent defeat. Not weapons, just people who didn't know how to stop being people. "Update the designation," V said quietly. "Add a note to the classification." "What kind of note?" Fenn asked. "That uncontainable variables can be peaceful indefinitely, as long as they're never given a reason to be otherwise." Rake made a sound that might have been agreement, a warning. "A reminder," V corrected, "for us, that some things can't be managed through force or containment, only through ensuring they never need to become what they're capable of becoming." Kess's ship reached the transit lane and jumped, disappearing into faster-than-light in a brief flare of exotic radiation. Gone. Ordinary. Just another cargo hauler making just another delivery. The scanner finally stopped trying to recalculate her threat profile. Instead, it simply maintained her classification: uncontainable variable, persistence probability, absolute, threat duration, indefinite, recommended action, peaceful coexistence. V saved the report, filed it in the station's permanent records, and returned to his regular duties. 47,001 arrivals processed. The routine would continue. Life would go on. But somewhere in the back of his mind, in the part of him that 6 centuries of perfect operation had trained to trust the scanner's judgment, a new understanding had taken root. Humans didn't need to be stronger or faster or more advanced than anyone else. They just needed to be more patient, more stubborn, more willing to keep walking forward when everyone else had stopped. And in a universe of finite resources, finite patience, and finite endurance, that made them the most dangerous thing the scanner had ever measured. Not because of what they were, but because of what they would never stop being. 3 months later, Outpost Kepler 7. Kess Tavern delivered her cargo, machine parts and agricultural equipment, exactly as manifested, accepted payment, and filed her next route. The station administrator, a VIN like Director V, processed her paperwork without incident. Her file flagged red in his system. Uncontainable variable. He looked at the cargo hauler, scuffed jumpsuit, tired eyes, someone who'd been doing this job long enough to make it look easy, and wondered what the flag meant. Then he approved her departure and went back to work. Some questions, he decided, were better left unexamined. Some warnings were better left heeded. And some species were better left as peaceful neighbors rather than obstacles. Kess's ship departed right on schedule, already plotting her next delivery, her next destination, her next reason to keep moving forward. Because that's what humans did. They persisted. Not out of malice. Not out of ambition. Simply because stopping had never occurred to them as a permanent option. And in the vast, cold mathematics of the universe, that persistence constant, that refusal to accept finality, made them exactly what the scanner had recognized. Not a threat. Not a weapon. Just an equation that never resolved. An answer that never stopped being a question. A species that would outlast obstacles by the simple expedient of still being there when the obstacles were gone. The end.